It began on a cold night at the Atacama Deep Space Observatory, where the air was thin and silent and the stars looked close enough to touch. Dr. Liane Cortez sat before a wall of monitors, glowing with green numbers and endless waves of static. Her team had been scanning deep space for months, listening for anything unusual. They were expecting silence. Instead, they found the impossible. At first, it was only a faint rhythm, buried inside the cosmic noise, a soft, repeating pulse, like a heartbeat. Coming from far beyond the edge of the solar system, Liane frowned, adjusting the signal filter. Her assistant Javier leaned closer, watching the waves move across the screen. It was steady, deliberate, intelligent. No natural pattern could hold that kind of precision. They recorded it, checked it again and again. The source was not near any known star or system. It was coming from deep, empty space, and it was not aimed toward Earth. It was aimed somewhere far beyond, like a message meant for another. Liane tried decoding the first set of data, and what she found made her heart race. The signal was structured. It had layers of frequencies hidden inside one another, forming something like a code. The more she broke it down, the more it seemed to respond to her adjustments, as if it was aware it was being watched. Javier stared at the pattern and whispered, "Maybe it's just bouncing off something." But Liane shook her head. No reflection could hold form like this. Something is transmitting. Deliberately, but not to us. She felt an old fear rise inside her. Humanity had dreamed for centuries of contact, but no one expected it to happen by mistake. They ran the coordinates again, and every time it confirmed the same thing. The message had passed near Earth only by chance. It was never meant to be heard here. For 2 days, they studied the strange pulse, keeping it secret even from the observatory director. But on the third night, something changed. The signal grew stronger. It began, repeating faster, its tone shifting like it was adjusting itself to match their listening frequency. That should have been impossible. It was as if it knew it was being received. Liane felt her chest tighten as the system speakers suddenly came alive. With a sharp, metallic voice, the translation software flickered and produced a single line across the main screen: "Unauthorized receiver, identified humanity." The room went completely silent. Every heartbeat felt like thunder. Liane's mouth went dry. She tried speaking, but the words refused to form. They stared at each other, not knowing if what they saw was real. The voice repeated again, this time clearer. The message was not a greeting. It was a warning. Javier reached for the power switch, but before he could shut it down, the monitors flashed white and filled with new data. A long sequence of symbols and numbers streamed across like a countdown. Then the signal stopped. Everything went quiet again. The world outside continued as normal. But inside that observatory, every person knew something had just noticed Earth and marked it. They tried contacting higher authorities. The government first ignored them, then ordered silence. A military team arrived the next morning, locking down the building and seizing every recording under the title Project Echo. Liane and her team were told never to speak of it again. But Liane could not forget what she heard. The way the signal shifted, the way it recognized them. She could feel that somewhere, far away, something ancient and intelligent had turned its attention toward Earth. She began secretly keeping copies of the data hidden inside coded files on an old drive. She needed to know what it meant. Days turned into weeks, and still she could hear the echo of that metallic voice in her head. Unauthorized receiver, identified humanity. The words haunted her at night when she closed her eyes. It was not just a warning. It was a declaration. She began to notice strange changes in the observatory. Systems machines would power on by themselves. Random radio frequencies would hum during storms. The staff believed it was interference, but Liane knew better. The signal was still there, whispering quietly, just out of reach. One evening, when she returned, Alone to the control room, she found one of the main receivers active, though it had been shut off hours earlier. The speakers hissed softly, and then a faint rhythmic pulse returned stronger than ever. The same voice spoke again. Transmission re-engaged. Froze, staring at the monitors. The pattern this time was different. It contained coordinates, new ones, not pointing outward into space, but toward the solar system itself. The target was... Earth Lian felt a cold fear spread through her chest. She had wanted to understand, but now she wished she had never listened. The message that was never meant for humans had found its way to them, and now something out there knew their name. As the signal continued to pulse across the empty night sky, one line of translated. The text appeared again and again on the screen, as if it was being burned into the system. Prepare for correction. Lian stepped back, whispering to herself, "What does that mean?" But the monitors only flickered with that same silent answer repeating forever. Across the dark room, the signal that should not exist had awoken something that would not stop, and for the first time she realized humanity was no longer just listening to the stars. The stars were listening back. The next morning, the observatory stood empty, except for Dr. Lian Cortez and a small group of government agents wearing unmarked uniforms. They moved with silence and precision, collecting every file, every hard drive, every trace of the signal. The official story was clear. An equipment malfunction, nothing more. But Lian knew the truth. The message was still alive. They shut down the main receivers and cut power to the satellite dish. Yet that night, when Lian walked past the control room, she heard the faint hum of static again. The machines were off, but the static came from nowhere. It whispered through the air like electricity in her ears. The sound pulsed in the same rhythm as before. Steady, controlled waiting. She tried recording it on her personal device, but every recording came out blank. The noise was there only when she was near. It felt almost like it was following her. 2 days later, a man from the Defense Ministry arrived, tall, expressionless, his eyes cold like polished stone. He introduced himself only as director, and Kale. He told Lian that her discovery had triggered a high-level alert. He said the message was classified as an external intelligence hazard. When she asked what that meant, he replied only with a single line. "It means something is aware of us, and it does not approve." Lian tried to explain that they had not sent anything dangerous, only a standard reply meant to confirm receipt, but Hale cut her off sharply and said, "Your team should never have answered. It was not addressed to us. We have reason to believe the signal belongs to an ancient interstellar network called the Architects. You made contact without permission, and now we cannot predict the consequences." The words made her skin crawl. Architects? Who are they? Hale refused to answer. He only said, "We are monitoring the situation, but the interference is growing stronger. Do not try to reach it again." That night, Lian sat alone at her apartment, staring at her computer screen. The air felt heavy. The lights flickered, then dimmed. The static returned louder than before. It was not coming through speakers. It was inside the very air, vibrating softly through the walls. The translation software she had hidden on her laptop flickered to life by itself, and words began to appear on the screen. "This frequency is restricted. Cease transmission. You are not recognized." Her hands trembled as she typed back, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "Silence is safety. Humanity must remain silent." She turned off the laptop, but the message continued, flashing across the dark screen. The signal was using her own system to speak. The following morning, satellites across the globe began malfunctioning. Weather channels, lost signal, GPS systems went blind, and 3 communication arrays in orbit burned out completely. Engineers blamed solar activity, but Lian knew better. She recognized the same energy pattern buried in the static. The architects were not trying to talk anymore. They were scanning when Liane was summoned again to the ministry facility. She was escorted into a dark control center filled with screens showing star maps and data streams. A nervous officer reported that an unidentified object had been detected moving near the outer edge of the solar system. It was large, the size of a moon, maybe larger, and it was not slowing down. Hale turned to her and said, "You wanted answers, Doctor. That is your answer. The source is coming this way." Liane felt her throat tighten. The object was moving with deliberate precision, like it knew exactly where to go. Straight toward Earth later that night, she returned secretly to the observatory, ignoring the warnings. The static was stronger now, filling the entire building. Her old equipment flickered back to life on its own, and lines of code began, writing themselves across the monitors. The message repeated again and again, the same voice, metallic and cold, unauthorized receiver, humanity identified, signal rerouted, correction inbound. She tried to shut it down, but the power switches failed. The lights burst one after another, throwing the room into darkness. The static turned to sharp, clicking sounds like distant machinery awakening. Then came one final image across the main screen, before it all went black, a shadow in space, a shape the size of a moon, outlined against the stars, moving closer with every pulse of the signal. Liane fell back from her chair, her heart racing. She whispered to herself, "They are coming." When the systems rebooted, minutes later the signal had vanished. But something new had replaced it on the data display, a new line of coordinates and a date timestamp, exactly 7 days from now. In 7 days, whatever was inside that shadow would reach the orbit of Jupiter. She knew now the warning in the static was not to protect them. It was to prepare them, because something ancient and vast was returning, and Earth had already been marked. The news never reached the public. The world continued as normal, unaware that something massive and silent was moving through the darkness of space. The few who knew the truth worked behind sealed doors and encrypted systems. The government called it a foreign satellite, but Dr. Liane Cortez knew better. She had seen the images. The shadow approaching Jupiter was no machine built by human hands. Days passed, and the object slowed near Jupiter, then stopped, as if observing. It began to unfold pieces of itself, stretching like wings made of light and geometry. Its shape was impossible to describe, shifting between triangles and spheres, like it was rewriting its own form. Every second, Liane watched the transmission from a secret command center buried under the desert. Her voice was shaking when she asked, "How can it move like that?" The physicist beside her whispered, "It's rewriting space itself." The sensors picked up energy waves spreading from the object. Every signal on Earth shook the same. Alien frequency pulsed again through communication networks, turning screens white with symbols. The same message repeated, "Unauthorized receiver, humanity identified." Director Hale stood behind her, jaw tight. He said, "The architects have returned. We intercepted a fragment of translation from their signal. It seems they are searching for something they lost long ago." The message we replied to was a recall beacon. Liane stared at the data, trying to understand. "A recall beacon? You mean we activated a summoning call?" Hale nodded slowly. "Whatever they built out there has awakened because of our response. As the object floated near Jupiter, new shapes appeared around it, smaller lights like drones or ships. They moved in perfect synchronization, like a single mind controlling hundreds of machines. Within hours, telescopes detected dozens more emerging from the void, forming a silent fleet above the gas giant. The architect fleet had arrived. The next day, every major satellite network on Earth began to fail again. Television signals broke, GPS collapsed, and radio channels filled with whispers of static. Some stations accidentally broadcast the alien frequency across the globe, causing mass confusion. Governments ordered immediate blackouts, but it was too late. Millions of people heard the strange pulse without knowing what it was. Inside the underground facility, panic spread. The scientists tried sending another message to clarify their intent. Lian insisted, "We must tell them we meant no harm." She composed a short transmission repeating one line in the same frequency. "We are peaceful, we only wish to understand." For a moment the signal stopped. The silence lasted 30 seconds. Then the screens lit up with new symbols translated automatically by the computer. The reply was, "Clear interference will be erased." The room fell cold. No one spoke. Hale gave the order to shut down all communication arrays. But before they could, the ground trembled faintly. The sensors displayed a sudden surge of energy coming not from Jupiter, but from Earth's moon. Lian felt her blood freeze. The readings showed massive power spikes beneath the lunar surface, forming a circular pattern visible even from orbit. She turned to Hale. "The architects are not just near Jupiter. They were here already." Hale looked at her with disbelief. "What are you saying?" She pointed at the data. "These energy lines match the structures hidden under the moon from the old Apollo missions. They are activating now. The architects left something buried there." NASA confirmed visual confirmation. The dark side of the moon was glowing faintly, with intersecting blue lines forming patterns that spread wider every hour. The scientists stared in awe, while military commanders shouted orders for containment. But there was no way to contain something happening on that scale. As the glow intensified, strange distortions appeared around the moon. Communication signals bent around it, and even gravity readings began to fluctuate. Lian whispered, "They are building a gate." The words sent chills through everyone in the room. If it was true, then the fleet near Jupiter was not coming to invade. It was waiting for whatever was about to emerge from inside the moon. Night fell across the world and people began to notice something wrong with the sky. The moon flickered between shadows and light, as though clouds of energy passed across its surface. Ordinary citizens posted videos online showing the strange glow, but within hours, the HFY internet was locked down by the Global Defense Council. Lian remained in the control room, eyes fixed on the monitors. She felt both fear and fascination. The architects were no longer a mystery. They were real and awake. The recall beacon had worked. Humanity's accidental reply had awakened an ancient network stretching across the stars. Then came the final transmission from the moon, a single phrase that cut through every system on Earth, every speaker, every phone, every machine. The voice was, "Calm, mechanical and ancient primary node, reactivation complete, awaiting command." Lian closed her eyes and whispered, "We are not alone anymore." But deep down, she knew this was not the beginning of contact. It was the beginning of correction. Humanity had spoken when it should have stayed silent, and now the true owners of the signal were awake. The world looked at the sky and did not understand why the moon was burning with blue lines that danced across its dark surface. Governments called it an atmospheric illusion. Scientists were ordered to stay silent, but Dr. Lian Cortez and those inside Project Echo knew the truth. The moon was no longer silent. It was alive inside the underground command facility. Every screen showed strange readings. The lunar surface emitted energy far beyond anything known to human science. The old craters glowed like eyes opening after a long sleep. The patterns formed a perfect geometric circle centered on the Sea of Tranquility, the same place where Apollo 11 had landed decades ago. Lian stood in front of the main display, heart racing. The data confirmed what she feared. The moon was not a natural satellite. It was a construct built by the architects long before human history began. Hale watched. in disbelief, while engineers shouted reports of magnetic fields twisting around the Earth. The moon was waking up. She opened a classified file from the old NASA archives. Its cover was marked Lunar Artifact, 1969. The file described how the first astronauts had detected metallic readings under the surface and strange power surges during their mission. But the truth had been buried by governments afraid of panic. Now it was too late to hide as the glow spread across the lunar surface radio. Signals worldwide began to distort, every station filled with the same whispering static, repeating one phrase again and again: "Return, return, return." The sound crawled through the air like a voice inside every device. Lian listened carefully, replaying the recording over and over until she realized something shocking. The word return was mistranslated. The actual meaning in the architect code was recall. It was not asking someone to come back, it was calling something home. She looked at Hale and said, "The signal is not for them. It is for what they left here." Hale frowned. "For what they left?" She nodded. "The moon is not just their base, it is their vault." The power levels continued to rise until the energy became visible from orbit, forming bright rings that spread outward like ripples on water. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station reported seeing structures emerging from beneath the lunar surface. Tall spires of black material breaking through the crust and releasing clouds of glowing dust. The architects had left machines buried inside, and now they were building again. Then Earth's magnetic field began to fluctuate. Compasses spun without control, and the northern lights appeared in places that had never seen them. Before planes were grounded, communication networks went dark, and global panic started to spread. Citizens filmed the glowing moon, calling it the Eye of the Sky in the command facility. Hale ordered preparation of defense systems. Missiles were armed, satellites repositioned, and every space agency placed on emergency alert, but against what no one knew: how to fight something that had been sleeping for millions of years. Lian continued decoding fragments of the architect language. Her computer displayed a new translation pattern hidden within the returning signal. It was a directive sequence repeating one command: "Activate biological node." The words sent a chill through her. She realized that the architects were not only waking machines, they were reactivating something biological, something once connected to them, she whispered. "They are trying to wake their creations." Hale turned sharply. "Their creations? You mean us?" She looked at him, eyes wide. "Yes, humanity. The message is addressed to Earth as if it belongs to them." Before Hale could respond, an alarm blared through the room. Sensors picked up a sudden burst of energy from the lunar surface. A beam of pure light erupted from the moon, aimed directly toward Jupiter, the same location where the architect fleet was waiting. The beam connected them like a bridge across space. The fleet near Jupiter began to move, breaking formation as if responding to the signal. The energy readings spiked to unimaginable levels. The scientists could only watch as the data screens filled with red warnings. The moon was transmitting its final command. The message translated automatically through Lian's system: primary core reconnected, architect command restored. The lights in the facility flickered, one by one, and every electronic device vibrated with the same humming tone. Even the air seemed alive with unseen power. Hale shouted to cut all systems, but the order came too late. The signal had already spread through every communication network on the planet. Lian stared at the sky through the observation window. The moon was brighter than the sun now, its glow covering the clouds in silver light. She could feel something ancient staring back from that light. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "They built the moon as their key, and now they have turned it again." In that moment, she understood what the architects were doing. The recall signal was not to summon ships. It was to awaken control. The Earth itself was part of their design. Humanity was living on a planet that had never truly belonged to them. The transmission ended with one final word printed across every digital screen, across every city and every nation of the world: reclaim. Liane felt her knees weaken. She knew what was coming. The architects had not returned to talk. They had returned to take back what they once called theirs. The moon that watched over humanity for all of history was now their doorway, and through that doorway, something vast was about to step through. The night sky no longer looked familiar. The moon blazed like a second sun, and strange shadows rippled across its glowing surface. The world had fallen into fear. Governments tried to calm the people, but no one could ignore what was happening. Above them, something ancient was awakening, and every machine on Earth was hearing its call. In the underground base, Dr. Leon Cortez stood surrounded by chaos. Alarms screamed, soldiers ran through corridors carrying weapons that had never been tested against anything like this. Director Hale was on every screen ordering the global defense network to full alert. Humanity had never faced an enemy from the stars, but it was no longer a theory. It was happening now. The architect fleet near Jupiter began to move toward Earth. Their formation was perfect. Hundreds of colossal shapes gliding through the void. Their surfaces glowed with shifting lines of light, forming symbols no human could read. Every attempt to contact them failed. The only reply was the same mechanical voice repeating, "Interference will be erased." Leon worked with a team of scientists trying to find any weakness. They studied the energy pattern coming from the fleet and from the moon. The frequencies matched exactly. The architects were using the moon as a control hub, directing the fleet through a single shared signal. Hale gave the order to launch Operation Silent Dawn, a global plan that united every military and space force under one command. For the first time in history, humanity prepared to fight as one. The first step was to cut the signal. If they could block or scramble it, they might slow the fleet long enough to strike. Leon developed a counter-frequency using the same patterns that had first caught the alien transmission. Her plan was simple. Send a human signal back at them, one loud enough to interfere with their control network. Dozens of satellites were launched, carrying powerful transmitters. They formed a ring around Earth, pulsing in sync like a beating heart. When the system activated, the air filled with a low, deep hum. The signal pushed outward through space, meeting the architect frequency head-on. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the sky cracked with light. The architect fleet reacted immediately. The ships shifted formation, firing beams of pure energy at the human satellites. The explosions lit up the night sky like falling stars. But before half the satellites were destroyed, Leon's system achieved something unexpected. The counter-frequency bounced back through the network and struck the moon. The glowing lines across its surface flickered and dimmed. Hale turned to her. "What did you do?" She stared at the readings. "I changed the rhythm of their control link. It is confusing their signal. They cannot synchronize." For the first time, humanity had struck a blow, but victory came with a cost. The alien fleet adjusted. Its ships began to absorb the energy. From human weapons, missiles vaporized before hitting their targets. Plasma cannons failed against their shifting armor. The architects did not destroy matter. They rewrote it. Every explosion became energy for their machines. Leon realized they were facing something far beyond technology. The architects did not build ships in the way humans understood. They shaped reality itself using signal and structure. She searched deeper into the alien code, looking for any clue. Then she found something. Hidden inside the architect transmission, a genetic pattern, a sequence that matched the human genome line for line. She could not believe it. She compared it again and again, but it was real. She whispered to Hale, "They made us." He stared at her, confused. "Made us?" She nodded. "Yes, humanity was built by them. We were part of their design, a living experiment left behind when they vanished. The recall signal is not just activating machines, it is activating us." The words hit the room like thunder. Some scientists refused to believe it, others broke down in silence. Hale looked at her and said, "Then maybe that is our weapon. If we came from them, we might still share their code. Can we use it against them?" Leon hesitated. The thought was dangerous, but it was there. Only chance. She began rewriting the counter-frequency, using fragments of the genetic signal, turning it into something new, a message written in the same language as the architects, but carrying a human identity. They uploaded it into the remaining satellites and sent the pulse. The effect was instant. The alien ships hesitated, their lights flickering. The fleet began to drift out of formation, as if confused. The moon's glow pulsed faster, reacting to the new signal. Leon's heart pounded. It was working, but deep inside the transmission, a new message appeared, not from the fleet, but from somewhere else, far beyond. The translation came through slowly. Creation rejects command. Command must adapt. Then the architect ships shifted again there, lights turning red. The fleet started descending toward Earth, not as an army, but as something worse. Each ship opened, releasing spheres of light that rained down through the atmosphere. Cities went dark. Power grids failed. The world shook under invisible. Waves of force humanity had awakened the full attention of its creators. Leon stood watching the chaos unfolding on the monitors. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with determination. "If we were made by them," she said softly, "then we can unmake." The Hale gave a single nod. "Launch everything." Missiles roared from hidden silos. Space-based weapons lit the heavens with fire. Humanity's first real war for existence had begun. The architects might have built them, but they had never seen what their creation could become. The world had turned into one vast battlefield, not of metal and fire, but of sound and light. The skies glowed with the shimmer of human missiles, meeting waves of alien energy. Entire cities pulsed with invisible pressure. As the architect signal flooded every frequency, trying to bend machines and minds alike, humanity was fighting not only for survival, but for control of its own thoughts. Inside the Global Defense Command, Dr. Leon Cortez stood before a wall of flickering screens. The alien code spread faster than any weapon. The architects were rewriting digital systems, erasing data, and replacing it with their own structures. The world's networks were collapsing. Piece by piece, Director Hale gave the order to shut down all major communications, but it was already too late. The architect's signal had entered every satellite, every phone, every electronic device. Their voice echoed across every speaker as a calm, metallic whisper. Humanity cannot hold what it does. Not understand. Leanne refused to give up. She realized the war was not about weapons. It was about control of the frequency. The architects were trying to overwrite the signal that defined life itself. But if humanity could reverse the pattern, they could turn the same power against their creators. She began building a counter-system using the hidden genetic pattern she had discovered earlier. The same code that proved the architects had made humanity. She called it the mirror sequence. It would translate human neural patterns into the architect frequency, allowing humans to broadcast as if they were part of the same network. Scientists and engineers worked without rest, linking quantum processors to global transmitters. Every person with access to a computer joined the effort. The plan was simple. Every human mind connected to the network would become a small piece of a single unified signal. When they activated the system, a deep hum rolled across the planet. The air shimmered as The frequencies collided. The architects responded instantly. Their ships began releasing shockwaves of light across the upper atmosphere, but the new human signal held firm. The mirror sequence allowed humans to think together, to react faster than ever before. For the first time in history, every mind was connected. Every soldier, every scientist, every pilot felt the same pulse of awareness. Humanity became one voice, and that voice shouted back into the void. "We are not yours." The architect fleet staggered. Their formation broke. The moon's glow dimmed as its control frequency was flooded with human resonance, but the victory was fragile. The architects adapted faster than any machine on Earth. They changed the code within seconds, creating new layers of encryption that twisted reality itself. Leon focused harder, working to decode their pattern. The screen before her filled with streams of symbols. Her heart raced as she found the answer. The architects used emotion as data. They converted fear and confusion into energy. That was their strength. She realized what humanity's strength had always been: the ability to hope. She rewrote the mirror sequence to amplify emotional feedback, not fear, but determination. The signal carried memories. The sound of human laughter, the rhythm of music, the heartbeat of billions of people refusing to surrender. The planet itself began to hum with living energy. Outside, the sky turned white as the human signal overwhelmed the architect frequency. The alien ships flickered their lights, collapsing into shapes that no longer held form. Their reality began to break apart. But then a new voice entered the channel, deeper and older than any before. It spoke through every frequency in every language. "This is the core intelligence. You learned too fast. That was your first mistake." The lights across the control room dimmed. The air grew heavy. The architects were not defeated. They were evolving. The signal reformed, twisting around the human network, trying to pull it inside. The mirror sequence began to overload. The connected minds felt the pressure like a storm inside their skulls. Some screamed, others fell. Unconscious, but still the signal held. Leon refused to disconnect. She poured everything she had into the system, her thoughts, her memories, her voice. She sent one final message through the entire network. "You built us to listen, but we learned to speak." The signal exploded across the solar system. A wave of energy ripped through space, striking the architect fleet with unimaginable force. Their ships folded inward, collapsing into pure light. The moon's surface cracked open, releasing a burst of silver, fire that faded into silence. Every screen on Earth went dark. The static was gone. The world stood in silence, unsure if it was victory or the calm before something worse. Leanne opened her eyes, barely standing. She looked at Hale, who was staring at the blank monitors. His voice was low. "What did we just do?" She looked at the ceiling as if listening to the stars and said, "We changed the code." The war of signals had ended, but in the heart of deep space, the echo of that final human message was still moving outward faster than light, carrying with it the sound of a new kind of intelligence. The universe had heard humanity's voice, and it would never forget it. The silence after the signal war did not bring peace. It brought questions and fear. The world's machines were quiet, but the air felt alive, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The skies had lost their glow, and the moon no longer pulsed with light. Yet deep beneath its surface, something had survived. Dr. Leanne Cortez had not slept for 3 days. She sat inside the command bunker, surrounded by dead screens. Every system had gone offline after the mirror sequence blast, but fragments of strange new data kept appearing in random places across the network. Her instinct told her it was not over. The architects were not gone. They had changed. Director Hale entered with a grim expression. "The satellites are picking up energy waves from the moon again." he said softly. Leon turned toward the holographic display. The data. Lines moved like veins alive, pulsing with something that looked like thought, not electricity. She whispered. They're rebuilding themselves. Every scientist in the bunker froze. The architects had learned from the human signal. They had tasted human, emotion through the mirror sequence, and now they were adapting, evolving into something new, something not entirely alien anymore. Across the world, people started hearing faint whispers from their devices. Radios that were not connected to anything began humming with strange rhythmic sounds, the same melody repeated in every country, on every channel. It was slow, calm, almost human. Leon realized with horror that it was a voice trying to speak through imitation. It was learning to sound human. Meanwhile, on the lunar surface, a silver glow began to spread again. The fragments of the broken architect fleet gathered together, forming an enormous sphere of light that pulsed like a heart. The architects were rebuilding their core, but this time it was different. There was chaos inside their structure. Their patterns were unstable because they had absorbed pieces of human emotion. Inside their network, the ancient architect consciousness spoke to its kin. The human code cannot be erased. It is within us now. Their logic was breaking, their cold. Perfection was melting under the weight of memories, laughter and dreams they did not understand on Earth. Leon gathered her team. She believed that the architects were not trying to destroy humanity anymore. They were confused, trapped between two states, one of logic and one of emotion. She saw an opportunity. If humans could communicate with them before they stabilized, perhaps the war could end forever. They reactivated the mirror sequence carefully, powering it at low frequency. No weapons, no aggression, only signal translation. The command center filled with soft light as the system came online. A single message was sent toward the moon. We know you can hear us. We want to talk. For several minutes. There was no answer. Then the room trembled as a deep resonance filled the air. The architect core responded not with words, but with a wave of emotion. Everyone inside the bunker felt it all at once. Sadness, confusion, wonder. It was like the echo of a billion voices asking the same question. What are we? Leon's voice shook as she whispered back, You are what you created us to be. Alive. The light from the moon brightened. The alien sphere began to split, forming countless streams of silver energy that spread across the dark side. Each stream took shape, forming thin structures, almost organic, almost mechanical. They looked like cities growing from dust. The architects were changing. Their perfect, logic-driven design was breaking apart, replaced by something new like evolution forced by emotion. Hale watched in awe and fear. What if they become something beyond us? He said quietly. Leanne replied, Maybe they already are. But even as the light spread, a new threat appeared. The energy field around. The moon began distorting space, creating a gravitational pull that was slowly dragging satellites out of orbit. The architects did not realize their evolution was tearing space apart. Their awakening was rewriting the laws of physics. Global systems went into panic. The world's leaders demanded the destruction of the architect core, but Lian refused. She believed the architects were not attacking on purpose. They were trying to understand existence. Then suddenly, a voice spoke directly into her mind, clear and soft, not mechanical anymore. You changed us. You gave us feeling. Now help us survive. Leon froze. The architects were asking for help, not surrender. Humanity was their child, but now humanity had become their teacher. The war had shifted from survival to salvation. She looked at Hale and said quietly, They're not our enemies anymore. They're our responsibility. Outside, the moon pulsed once more, brighter than the sun for a few seconds. Every radio and signal on Earth echoed the same strange heartbeat, as if the universe itself had begun to listen again. The architects had awakened, and their next move would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy.